Let me set up shop. Is it 10 already? I just finished the work and I'm sweaty. How are we? How are you? Good morning, good afternoon. Hope we're all doing fine. There's one person already online. Hello. I still have a few minutes to take my smoothie. I just made a banana smoothie with some yogurt and some spinach. It's the only way I take in raw spinach. I don't do raw foods, but at least I can get in some protein, if not for the iron content. So I think we can begin. When I think of migration, the first thing that comes to my mind is slavery. Yeah, I think that's the earliest and oldest form of involuntary migration that I can remember. And I'm not talking about intercontinental slavery. I mean right within the borders of Africa when they were intertribal wars, interkingdom wars, where one tribe will go to war with another tribe and then they would take slaves home. And that was one of the things that brought about tribal marks, from what I was told by my aunties and my uncles. Those things brought about tribal marks so that we could identify our lost relatives. And that is an involuntary form of migration, okay? And then came the white man from across the ocean with the ships, and involuntarily blacks were migrated or moved to um, to another continent, so to say. So you're officially welcome to the live chit chat with Dorcas Glader, me. I'm the African in Ecuador. I like to call myself an African in Ecuador. So um, last week I did a live session answering questions about the requirements you would need if you were thinking of coming to stay in Ecuador. And I thought I would just do another live today to talk about migration and the culture of migration, what motivates us or what shapes our mind to migrate, But I thought I would do it live because I cannot come and be researching and then record and then modify. And at the end of the day, only two people will come and view, or nobody will even give you a like or a comment to let me know what I'm doing right or wrong. So I thought I'll just do it live and let it go organic. So here we are. By the way, for those of you who were with me live last Saturday, the Ecuadorian government is thinking of waiving off visa requirements for Nigeria and some other African countries. So depending on what will happen tomorrow, they are going to the election polls. Is one of the ambitions of the current administration because it has been discovered that Nigerians contribute positively to the economy of their host countries wherever they go. For example, they are responsible for about 26% of the economy of the US, So they are thinking if they can be doing that in the great USA, why not come here? So keep your fingers crossed. I'll be letting you know when it becomes official. Don't quote me on that. It is just something we're hearing. We're not sure. So I have my notes here. You see, it's a huge work to prepare video content. That's why you hear a lot of content creators when we say, please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment. It's work. It's not that we just wake up and put microphone in front of us and start talking. We make an effort to create something. You said, hello Fabri, I'm greeting you. Okay, so if you see me looking away, I'm going through my notes, all right? So today we're talking about migration culture and the culture of migration. Those are two distinct, although intertwined topics. Migration culture talks about the effect of migration on the people, namely we the migrants and the host countries, whereas the culture of migration talks about how we come to that point. Thank you so much, Fabri. I appreciate that. I hope you will be watching my subsequent videos. Okay, thanks. And so the culture of migrations mainly talks about our cultural beliefs, our psychological uh, biography or imprint, religion, factors that makes a society or a community be positive to migration or negative to migration, you know. So those are two topics that we'll be talking about. So migration culture is referred to as the study of how cultural beliefs and social patterns influence people's decisions to migrate, as well as its impacts on both the migrant and host societies. So for example, when I came to Ecuador, there was the need for people um, to learn the language of their intended migrants, namely myself. So they had um, to learn English. They had to make room for us. They had to look for people who would be able to accommodate us, to work as our interpreters, to move us around. You know, it affects that. When my mom and dad moved to Nigeria, they were looking for a job. As a patriarchal society, all right, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you, Fabri. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. So you find out that an immigrant or a group of migrants can affect a culture, like I was saying before I was interrupted. When my mom went to Nigeria and my dad finally joined her 3 years later, when they went to seek for jobs, there were a lot of factors at play. The influence of migrants on the decisions of the host country now played in this manner that even though Nigeria at that time was mostly a patriarchal society, meaning they preferred men to the women folks, but my mom as a migrant or a returning Nigeria had the upper hand. And so she was given a job as opposed to the man who was supposed to be the one to get a job. You see what I'm saying? That's migration culture. So they altered the culture of the place where the people they went to stay in, namely their host society. And in return, also, they had to now learn the language, the cultures, the systems of their returning of their receiving community, namely the host community, you see. So, but first of all, who is an immigrant? A migrant, rather. So, a migrant, according to the dictionary, is someone who moves from or has moved across international borders or within a country away from his habitual residence, regardless of his legal status, that is, if he's voluntarily moved or moving or involuntary, regardless of the causes of migration or what is the length of his stay in the new place. Okay, so if you have moved from your place of birth, let's put it that way, from your place of birth to another place, you have migrated. Migration is just another word for movement. So in the Nigerian context and Africa at large, like when I went to Congo, I also saw that we usually have internal migration where most times people move from the villages to the bigger cities or from a small town to a bigger city. Usually it's for education or for business opportunities, or sometimes even something as banal as marriage, where a woman marries from one tribe to another, and so that is internal migration. And then we have the involuntary migration where the migrant is forced, namely they have no choice in the matter. They are forced to move. An involuntary migrant may move because of conflict, because of war, violence, persecution, like the Rohingya Muslims who are now in Cambodia, persecution, like we see in some countries like Boko Haram, disturbing people, forcing people to migrate from the northern part of Nigeria to the middle belt region, or sometimes it's the environment, like what happened in Asia, where the earthquake has forced people to leave their habitat, their natural places of birth, to go search for a greener or a better, a new home. The reasons for migration, most times people leave is um, for economic reasons, for change of lifestyle, for education, for access to basic amenities, for retirement. We have a lot of them here. Like there's a city here in Ecuador called Cuenca. If you go to Cuenca, they are mostly American retirees simply because the cost of retirement, the cost of living is cheaper here in Ecuador as opposed to their home country. But those are voluntary migrations or voluntary migrants, okay? And so we we find out that those are the two classes of migration. And then the issue of will usually is blurred. Okay, so for example, in say for example in Nigeria, someone would want to move for studies, and then maybe you cannot afford um, the school fees of a private university in your place, and then you think, okay, maybe the course I want to do will be cheaper or more affordable for me in another place. So it's not that you were forced, but there's that constraint on you that makes you to leave, okay, to move. Or like what we are seeing today in many cases, it's that people are looking for safety, okay. In the early 60s, 70s, people mostly used to migrate out of the country temporarily. It was mainly for education. They would go to the white man's country and come back, and then they would have a set career. At least that was the pattern in Nigeria, as far as I know, where we went on scholarships, got an education, and then came back and started working. And most people, they had the job already waiting for them. They were absorbed into government parastatal. I think it was the same thing also in Congo, where you traveled and came back, and the degrees you earned outside the country was much more valued than what was issued by the universities within the country. In my case, I am more of a voluntary I'm more of a voluntary migrant because basically nobody forced me. I would say I find myself, my reason for migrating from Nigeria was more of a lifestyle. I wanted to not necessarily seek greener pastures, it was part of it, but it was my lifestyle. I was going to change my lifestyle or social status from a single lady to married lady. So I got married to a man who wanted to travel, whereas the man I was married to was forced to leave his own country due to the war that took place in his country, Liberia. And so we moved. So to summarize what I was saying on migration culture, there are so many factors at play. There are two kinds of migrants, the voluntary one and the involuntary one. The voluntary one, like I said, has a choice in the matter and is the one that goes to seek for a better job, for retirement, for lifestyle, economic opportunities, or to further the education. Whereas the involuntary migrant normally does not have a choice in the matter. So those will be like people who are kidnapped to go for trafficking, who are trafficked, for sex work, which used to be a lot of the cases of a lot of Nigerians that were Nigerian women who were in Italy and in some Arab countries I learned, So those people are forcefully moved out of their natural countries and going to other places. Sorry, there's I'm sorry, they hawk here with microphones, right? That's how we. Sorry about that. So, it's the deal Saturday. People are hawking with microphones. It kind of gets on my nerve. But let's continue. Um, yeah, so as I was saying, people who are forced for trafficking, people who are persecuted will leave to like political victims, victims of political opponents, where people who are being pursued for having different political views. We had a lot of that in Congo, and a lot of our people had to migrate to Belgium, to other French countries, and the like. Okay, so that is all I wanted to bring about the culture of migration. And when we talk about the effect of our host of Nigerians or migrants on their host countries. One good example that I can say, like I said at the beginning, is the impact that we bring to our host society. Like I said at the beginning, Nigerians are beginning to make a name for themselves in the States. Not beginning, they've already made a name for themselves in the States. So we go with part of our culture, we go with part of our cultural identity, so to speak. You have the West Africans to thank for the popularity of a lot of African clothing. We have shaped the music industry. We have shaped how literature is written. We've left a lot of imprints in our host countries. So those are the migration cultures. Those are the things that migration culture studies, the impact on the people. Okay. Now, when we talk of the culture of migration, it's a different thing. And even though it's related, it talks about the effect of the community on individuals, what namely shapes people to migrate. So for example, the cultural beliefs, their values, social patterns that makes them to believe. And those things usually change over time. And I'll come back, like I said, I'm talking about that culture in Nigeria, the culture of migration in Nigeria. Like I said at the beginning, post-colonization, we saw a lot of people going to the white man's country, like we say, to acquire education, to acquire more knowledge about the white man's world, about civilization. And at the time, it was considered something very prestigious in many communities to have someone who would, represent the community. It was a prestige actually. And so that was the culture, the belief to say, he's gone to the white man's country. And so you saw a lot of people vying for scholarships. They would go and then the community would contribute money and send the person, and you come back, work, even have to pay back the community. They used to make that contribution. Many communities will make that contribution to see that they also had this. And it was a prestigious thing, you come back and they will call you Mama Munganga, Lekia Munganga in Congo. Munganga is a doctor, so it was a prestigious thing that you had traveled to the white man's land and come back. And for me, it was interesting because during the 80s and the 70s, I think even towards the early 90s, there was fairness when it came to scholarship, actually, for people to go. And our migration was more temporary than permanent. So what I mean is that people went and came back to better their countries, to better their community, to better the government of their people that they find us in. And, but over time, the effects, in my own opinion, I think the the effect of tribalism began to be very glaring in our system of government, where it was no longer about people who deserved those opportunities to go to school abroad, to go and gain wisdom and come back, And so we began to see people struggling by themselves or families struggling to send one person or two people to go to the white man's land. Now, social factors was also social factors was where our loved ones went home, found out that, okay, it was better there, and they didn't come back, and they were sending that money, and they were sending that goodies. At the end of the year, there was that package that was coming from the abroad, and so people were like, oh no, if X family went to abroad, see the way their lifestyle changed, I think we should also send our firstborn to the abroad. That was the social society was beginning to shift. That was the shift we were seeing in society. So we would be looking at, and I'm talking when I say we, I'm talking of we Nigerian, we'll be looking at that family and say, okay, Mr. Yakubu's family, they are looking better just because their son is in abroad and the situation back home has deteriorated or is deteriorating. And so if he's doing well, I think we can also send Usman to go so that he too can be selling us dollars or pounds or yeah, well, those days was mostly pounds because I think most of us went to England, because that's the land of our colonial masters. I mean, we were more comfortable going to English-speaking countries, but mainly to the Great Britain, as they used to call it those days. And the older people used to go there, I think, to further their courses. I know of some aunties and uncles who used to go there on courses to further their careers. But they would always come back home. There was a Nigeria to build up. There was a Nigeria there was hope for Nigeria at the time, where people had a reason to come back. Even as far back as the early 2000s, people still came back home. There was that hope. But what I've seen in recent times, which was what moved me to talk about this migration issue, was the the lack of human rights, the lack of respect for human rights is what is making my generation, the millennials, and the younger generation, the Gen Zs, to japa, like we say. And I think that is the biggest factor that is making Nigerians and Africans at large to migrate, so to say, because if you look at what happened in the Sorosuke saga a couple of years back, I forget exactly when that was, whether 2022 or 2023, it was just because people chose to speak up against corruption, you know, and young people lost their lives. A lot of watching Neze of Neze was saying that was one of the reasons why she and the husband chose to leave. So whereas in the 70s, 80s, people left for educational reasons, people left for holidays and came back. These days, in the new 21st centuries, Nigerians are living in their droves, in their numbers. Africans are living in their numbers for safety reasons because our human rights are not respected. I was in Congo a couple of years, almost a decade ago. The culture there was not really friendly towards people wanting to migrate, especially to the West, because of the culture. I was conversing with, we were talking, and I discovered that these people who I was talking to were more of, how do you call them? People born baby boomers, and the Generation X who had just recently, who were the first people to know the first fruits of independence. And so there was that, how can I put it? There was still that aversion to Western culture. And so we were not very welcoming of Western culture. And so many people didn't want their kids to travel, didn't even want to travel. They would rather stay in the midst of economic hardship because we didn't buy the white man's way of life. You know, we didn't embrace his culture. So that was that influenced many Congolese to rather stay home than to travel outside, because I remember we're having that conversation. This person said, no, but that is modern slavery. They came and took us forcefully, and now we are going there by ourselves voluntarily to go and submit to their own way of things, namely their culture, their lifestyle. It's not right. If we said we wanted to be independent, we were able to stay home in Africa and make the system work for us. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's the case today, because I see a lot of us, even from Congo in the diaspora, we are traveling, we're living, you know, just for the fact that with technology, cultures have intermingled. We are seeing how things are done in other places. We are seeing how people are treated in other cities. And so corruption mainly has eaten deep into the fabric of society, like I said, to the point that psychologically our youths in Nigeria don't really have hope for the future. Okay, someone did ask me that question one time in SA. Why is it that a Nigerian will just wake up, pack their bags, and go to somewhere that they don't know anybody, and yet they will just go there? And the truth is, we are very enterprising. We are very enterprising. A typical Nigerian wants to leave a better legacy for the next generation, and they would do that at all costs. I've seen families sacrifice almost everything just to see that that one person goes out there to make a better future for the rest of their siblings and things. And so we have come to believe that not that the white man is superior, but that there are more opportunities in the white man's country. I'll give you an example. When I was staying in South Africa, another South African was asking us, myself and a fellow Nigerian in class, why is it that we came to their country? And my colleague said to her, if we just had stable electricity, just stable electricity and the kind of road networks you had, we would not be here because there would be power for us to produce, there would be roads for us to supply our goods. Just those two things, you know. And so I think of such things, like myself staying here, someone was asking me if I was thinking of coming back home to Nigeria. I would not, because there is that shift in societal thinking that if you're not a politician, if you're not from royalty, if you are not old money in Nigerian society, then the next way to break through the barrier of the bars of poverty is to go abroad. Your next move is to go abroad and make money and change the listing. There was a time, someone, if you're watching, let me know in the comment section, where the goal for a lot of single women was to marry the abroadian. you know to marry the Abroadian or marry to the Abroadian family. An Abroadian is just an African or a Nigerian in the diaspora, because we, like I said earlier on, we saw the change, the socioeconomic changes in their families, and so we wanted to be attaching to those families, or ladies rather wanted to be attaching to those families by marriage. So it's a shift in this thing. And in fact, in many societies now, or many societies, amongst many people, if you have not, if you don't have that ambition to either go to the city or to even go abroad to make money, then you are considered lazy. You are considered, unserious with your life. You are not enterprising. People admire people who hustle, and Nigerians love to hustle. We love to make money. So that's why you see a lot of us traveling abroad. And when they come back home, there's that prestige that still accompanies someone who has gone abroad rather, and come back home. They have that to say he has gone back because he has earned well in a higher currency than what we have at home. So those are the few reasons, those are the few factors that affect the culture of migration in Nigeria. It's not to say there there is um, there is nothing good in the country. It's just to say corruption has eaten deep into our society, and it has changed the way we think. I know that a lot of us today have lost hope for our country to ever get better. What is fun is that there are a lot of people who are also going to Nigeria that still see Nigeria as a better place from where they are coming from, and there are more Nigerians who are leaving because they know that there is a better place where they are going to. Okay, so when you hear people say Nigerians love to migrate, we just take opportunity. No, is that we prefer to go to an unknown place where we know or have heard. And those informations are more easily accessible in today's world with technology. There are a lot of communities of Nigerians in different places on the planet. So you get more information readily thanks to the internet. And so people are living. It doesn't matter if you know somebody or not. If you have the requirements, you come here, you work, you get your visa, your first visa, then you get a temporary residence, then you get a permanent residence, and you're good to go. The next thing that the person is thinking is how to get their loved ones over. Gone are the days where we're just satisfied being alone and sending remittance home every month or every week. No, today we want everybody to leave the country, because it was not, back then it was an issue of money. And if one or two people could be outside working and send money home, those at home could also develop themselves or grow economically. But today it's about safety. The crime rate is high. The justice system is, eroded. There is no justice for the poor. And so people are not feeling safe in many African countries, in Uganda, in Congo, in Tanzania, in Niger. There are a lot of migrants. Every now and then you see documentaries about people dying in the Mediterranean Sea, and yet people are still taking the risk to go find safer places. And so for me, migration culture now is more about safety. People are looking for a safe place where they can then think of looking for economic opportunities. We're all running away to preserve life, even though the process itself is risking our lives, like the people who go through the desert or crossing those Mediterranean seas. So that is why you see the rise of Africans and um, especially Nigerians and other national African nationals traveling abroad. It's in today's world is mostly about our safety. It's mostly about safety, where you can go and be safe and have a roof over your head, have a government that can give you free access to health care, free access to legal advice, free access to safety, as opposed to where you are even afraid to be out in out of your home at night. So that is the answer to the question to that person who says, why is it that we're always traveling every day, traveling out, leaving our home country, we just jump up, because, and that person was from South Africa. Sorry to say that. It was a valid question. They didn't understand. At the time when I lived in South Africa, they were not really big on migrations. They always had a reason. There was a valid reason for a South African to leave home. So they didn't understand why there were so many Africans coming to their place. So they asked me that question. And so when I did that with live chat yesterday, last week rather, I thought I should explain to the non-Nigerians, to non-Africans who still don't know or who still don't understand, because many people come to Africa or certain countries in Africa as tourists, or just go to the nice parts of Africa and they think, oh no, but the continent is still beautiful. Why are you people leaving? Why are you people not staying? These are the issues. It's safety, it's opportunities that we don't have, is the cost of living that is going high. You put in a lot of effort and you receive little at the end of the day. Those are the things that are making people to migrate in their numbers. Another statistics just said that very soon the population of the country will drop, and I'm talking of Nigeria, because Nigerians are living in their numbers, they're living in droves, and then they're not going to come back. So until a solution presents itself, we're going to be seeing more of, how will I say, more of colored kids, Afro-American people, Afro-European people, because Africans are really traveling, Africans are really migrating. And those are the culture of migration is the cultural factors that are pushing migration forward, that are promoting migration. It's the belief that there is no hope back home. It's the belief that if you don't go out there to make wealth for yourself, to make wealth for your family, you are not brave, you are not enterprising. So I'm gonna stop here. I was a bit distracted with the noise outside. I hope you're able to take one or two points from what I've said, and I'll see you maybe next month. This will be the last live that I will do, and I think also the last topic I'll be talking about on migration, except of course somebody um, asks me another question. So I know it went a bit kind of topsy-turvy because I don't like to be distracted with noise. But that's it, guys. Thank you for following Fabri Emil Brites Rivas. Muchas gracias. I'm suspecting you are Spanish speaking. Muchísimas gracias por haberme seguido. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.